past midnight, and the winding roads leading to Chiang Rai were eerily quiet. My family, all soundly asleep, left me alone with my thoughts and the hum of the engine. The journey had been smooth so far, but I couldn't shake an uneasy feeling. As the miles rolled by, I noticed a car in the rearview mirror, following a bit too closely for comfort. Its headlights were bright and unblinking, and something about it set me on edge. I tried to brush it off as mere paranoia, but the car continued to tail us. Every time I sped up, it matched my pace. I took a deep breath, hoping it would just pass, but it didn't. My heart began to race as the road became more isolated, and the car behind seemed more menacing. Glancing at my sleeping family, I decided to take a sudden turn onto a less traveled road, hoping to lose whoever was following us. But they turned too. The new path was narrow, surrounded by thick trees and poorly lit. My hands were trembling on the wheel as I pushed the accelerator down, praying that I could lose them. I looked back again, but the car was still there, headlights blinding, closer now. Panic set in, and I fumbled with my phone, trying to dial the emergency number. Then, without warning, the car's headlights turned off. I gasped, my eyes straining to see where it had gone. The road ahead was dark and twisting, and the silence was deafening. I slowed down, peering into the blackness, when suddenly a figure appeared in the road. I swerved, barely missing it, and heard a loud crash as something hit the side of the car. My family woke up, screaming in confusion, and I struggled to regain control of the car. We made it to Chiang Rai, shaken and terrified, and reported the incident to the local police. They found nothing on the road, no sign of the car or the figure. The rest of our trip was consumed by fear and paranoia, and the memory of that night haunted us long after we returned home. The image of the unblinking headlights and the shadowy figure remains etched in my mind, a night drive gone horribly wrong. I had just left a remote field site in another state, where I had been working on a conservation project. The night was dark, the sky overcast, and the road stretched out like a long, shadowy ribbon. The journey ahead was long, but the thrill of the work had me energized. About an hour into the drive, I noticed something odd on the side of the road. It looked like an animal, but it was hard to make out in the darkness. Curiosity piqued. I slowed down to get a better look. After all, I was a conservationist, and the well-being of animals was my concern. As I approached, I realized it was a deer, lying motionless on the side of the road. I pulled over, grabbed my flashlight, and cautiously approached. Its eyes were wide open and its body was twisted unnaturally. Something about the scene was deeply unsettling. The deer's expression was one of sheer terror, and there were no visible wounds. It was as if it had died of fright. Suddenly, I heard a soft whispering sound coming from the trees. I spun around, shining my flashlight into the darkness, but saw nothing. The whispering grew louder, a strange, unintelligible murmur that seemed to surround me. Panic set in, and I ran back to my car, the whispering following me. I fumbled with the keys, glancing back at the trees, half expecting something to emerge, but there was nothing, only the soft, haunting whispering. I drove away as fast as I could, the whispers fading into the night. The rest of the journey was spent in a state of high alert, my eyes constantly darting to the rearview mirror, expecting to see something following me. When I finally reached my destination, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been watching me, something unexplainable and sinister. The image of the deer, the terror in its eyes, and the eerie whispering haunted me for weeks. It was a night drive that I will never forget. A simple act of compassion turned into a nightmare, and a haunting reminder that some things are better left undisturbed. The desert road seemed to stretch on forever. I was driving through the night, bound for a weekend getaway with friends. A light drizzle began, just enough to make the road ahead of me glisten in the headlights. The clock on the dashboard read 2:14 a.m. Everything was calm until the GPS suddenly glitched, rerouting me onto a narrow, winding road. It was supposed to be a shortcut, according to the robotic voice. But something felt off. The road was unpaved, filled with twists and turns that seemed unnatural. Trees loomed over the path, their twisted branches appearing like claws in the dim glow of my headlights. As I drove further, a thick fog began to roll in. The GPS lost its signal. I was alone on a forgotten road, unable to see more than a few feet ahead. An unsettling silence surrounded the car, broken only by the soft patter of rain. A figure then appeared in the distance. It was a woman in a white dress, standing in the middle of the road, her eyes reflecting the headlights like those of a nocturnal animal. I slammed on the brakes, heart pounding. She vanished. I told myself it was a trick of the light, a product of fatigue. Yet, a cold chill ran down my spine. I continued to drive, the road seeming to twist and turn in unnatural ways. Time lost all meaning. The clock on the dashboard was stuck at 2:14 a.m. No matter how far I drove, the road never seemed to end. Then, the car suddenly sputtered and died. Panic set in. I tried to restart it, but it was dead. I was trapped in an unending loop of fog and darkness. I reached for my phone, but there was no signal. The silence outside was deafening. I decided to stay in the car until morning. Hours passed, or so it felt. The clock still read 2:14 a.m. A knock on the window shattered the silence. I turned to find the woman in the white dress staring at me, her eyes hollow, her face pale and emotionless. I screamed, fumbling with the locks, but the doors wouldn't budge. She began to speak, her voice a whisper, yet clear in the still night air. "Join me." I closed my eyes, praying for it to be a dream. When I opened them, she was gone, but her words lingered. I spent a terrifying night in that car, the woman's face haunting me. The fog never lifted, the road never ended. When dawn finally broke, I found myself back on the highway, the car starting as if nothing had happened. I drove home in a daze, the weekend getaway forgotten. But the horror wasn't over. Days later, I found an old newspaper clipping about a woman who had died on that very road, exactly at 2:14 a.m. decades ago. Her spirit, they say, still lingers, trapped in a loop, looking for someone to join her. I still see her in my dreams. The road trip was over, but the nightmare had only just begun.